Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You'll get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they earn success in their careers. Along the way, we'll touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights CSIA members bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Ranbir Saini, Senior Director of Digital Product Management for GE Digital. In his role, Ranbir is the business leader for automation software, which includes HMI SCADAs, iFix, and Simplicity, as well as Operations Hub, which is a next-generation IIoT and HMI platform. He has 15 years of experience delivering industrial automation, operations management, and media content creation software to OEM, municipal, and enterprise customers. Ranbir, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me, Lisa.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you came to be with GE Digital?
Sure. So I'll start really at the early days. So I initially started out with a computing science degree at a university, and I started at a startup. And I entered the startup, and I was, had my student loans, and it was amazing. Actually, we had overtime. So within the first year, I actually paid off my student loans, which was fantastic. But then, all good things come to an end. And so at some point, I recall having this meeting. It was me and 5 other people from the office, and the CTO walks in, and we were probably about 60 people. And he walks in, and he says, "Sorry guys, I have to tell you this, but you 5 and myself are the only ones remaining. The venture capitalist firm has decided that they want to now sell us off, and they have to reduce the staff."
Oh my goodness.
So it was quite dramatic. It was my first job, and it was like losing a lot of friends. And then the whole tension of, okay, hopefully somebody will acquire us, or we're all going to be gone as well. And so luckily, what happened was over the next few months, we actually had acquisition through a company called Avid. And what I found out was that the acquisition happened because I was working with a customer who was a news customer. So they were a news agency that did news television for Denver. I was there and I was helping them try to build out their solution. And I saw that they had this video editing software. And they wanted to be able to try to get the video content to the web using our system. And it was not an easy way to do it. So what I did is I created this really, really simple application, which was just a couple of command lines in a day to actually push content from the video editing system into our publishing system to the web. And little did I know that little thing would actually provide so much value and have the company want to acquire us. And so early on in my career, I recognized the value of integration. And so that's where I started. And from there, I went to Avid, that media company. It's a broadcast media television company. And you would think, what is the difference between Avid and what we do in an industrial space? And it's very, very different, you would think, right? But actually, no, they're quite similar. You think about when you're doing news, it's 24/7. And when you're doing news, you have to do it in real time because you don't know what's going to happen at any time and in any situation. And thirdly, generally news stations are across the globe. So they're geographically dispersed solutions as well. And so in many ways, it's very, very similar to our industrial customers as well.
What problems and challenges are you seeing as top of mind for industrial customers?
That's a great question as well. And I think there's kind of 2 ways to think about that. There's first kind of the table stakes for the customer. When I say table stakes, it comes down to things like customers expect the products to be supported, stable, and secure. That's essential, right? Because in our space, they have to be secure and stable. And then beyond that, they also want to make sure that their investment in wherever you're building for them or the software will last over time because it's very costly again to replace or rip them out. And so they want it to last for multiple years. But beyond that, as we progress into the future, they're really looking at how can they reduce their total cost of ownership. And secondarily, they're looking at how can I actually increase my revenue, right? So they want to have greater productivity, greater efficiency to increase their margins. And then lastly, the world is changing. Our industrial world is dramatically changing. So they're really looking at ways to actually be able to compete within that new world and looking for guidance on how to do that. And I'll give you two examples. One is from a people perspective. So the workforce for our customers is starting to age. And so as the customer workforce is aging, they need to hire new inexperienced users. And so the question is, how can they actually get them up to speed quickly and stop them from making errors, right? That could actually hurt the plant or the facility. And secondarily, if you look at it from a manufacturing perspective and a retail perspective, the way people are purchasing now have changed. In many cases now, people want things that are more customized. They want to have, and there's this kind of demand generation through scarcity. And by doing that, what's happening now is manufacturers have to do shorter runs of manufacturing of equipment, or not equipment, sorry, of product. And so because of those situations, they need more adaptable, configurable solutions so they can do that quickly and change and reconfigure those solutions over time.
One of the big industry changes I hear a lot about right now is the industrial Internet of Things and digital transformation. Can you talk a bit about that and what it means to customers?
When it comes to the digital transformation IoT, there's a lot discussed about what it can do and how it can do it for you really, really quickly. But that's not really reality, right? It's not a light switch. You can't just plug in a bunch of software and automatically get these optimizations to increase your productivity and efficiencies. It really takes time. So the key thing I would say is, number one, it's a journey over time. And what that journey really is being able to connect all the different data and sources that you have, being able to actually then be able to associate the data together with the relationships they have to each other. And from there, being able to start visualizing that information to start increasing transparency and visibility into your operations, leading eventually into analytics for optimization. And so I think really that journey is what you're looking at. And usually what's going to happen with customers or what we're seeing is they get to the point where they get the connectivity to all the sources. And after that, what they're looking to do is actually start creating quick pilots, POCs, targeted apps to try to get value of all that new integration of all that software and all the technology and data as well. And so I think that really is where it's going and what the power of IoT would be.
Does this mean that you think HMI SCADAs will be irrelevant in the future?
Definitely not. And so a couple of things in that regards. Number one is you always will need to have something in the control network to actually control your assets and processes. And those have to be tried and tested products. And that is where SCADA lives, and that's really the core engine and real-time aspect of SCADA. So I truly believe that will stick around. I think the other part is what we're seeing now with IoT and this whole idea of having more visibility and more applications at different levels within your environment and for different stakeholders is the HMI type capabilities are stretching into different roles and different users. And I think that's kind of a big change. And overall, what I think is really necessary is not the HMI SCADA is going to go away, but it's going to be modernized from a technology perspective, from a user perspective, and also from a data aggregation perspective.
What is your vision for how HMI SCADA products will look like in the future?
So when I think of HMI SCADA in the future, it's really kind of the merging of kind of three things that are really important. Number one is what I call rapid application development. And really the goal there is to help customers and the actual developers be able to build the applications more quickly, to increase the time to value. I think a great way to think about that is if you think about smart homes. When you have a smart home, the idea is I get a new smart bulb, I plug it in, I should be able to go to my phone, I will see it on the smart home hub, and I'll be able to change it so I have it so it actually, maybe the light turns on at 6 p.m., it turns off at 11 p.m. So now imagine that you're actually a manufacturer or some plant manager and you have a new piece of equipment. And you get the piece of equipment, it's like plug and play. You add it into your environment. All of a sudden now it's discovered automatically with a global discovery service. And once it's discovered now, as an integrator, you can see it within a rapid application development tool that's web-based. You're able to actually now add it to the existing application HMI, just doing drag and drop and quickly creating the application. And voila, now you actually have the ability to add that to your environment and start using it. I think other parts of that so that's kind of one key theme. The second theme, what we always talk about, is intelligent user interface. And when I say that is traditionally what we have today is what's called an HMI, a human machine interface. And I believe over time, that's going to become more and more intelligent. And really the goal there is to provide more clarity and meaning with the appropriate context to users. And I think that's really, really essential in where we're going to go as an industry and from HMI SCADA perspective. And again, I would use an example. So think of an operator today. An operator today, like say they're somewhere further upstream in some type of assembly line. And all of a sudden they're looking at their screen and they get a flood of alarms. And all of a sudden their screen is full of all these alarms, some issue is going on, and they need to figure out what asset to look at, what context to look at to figure out what's going on. And then imagine now in the future, instead of doing that, that same operator looks at that screen and the intelligent user interface will actually say, hey, we believe the root cause of that is this downward piece of equipment that's further down in the line that's actually causing this domino effect of alarms to happen. It tells you what the issue is and which asset it is, but also, we can resolve the issue by changing the alarm limit, for example, in that piece of asset. So automatically it does it for you. So that prescriptive aspect of intelligence, I really believe is the future of the second kind of key theme. And lastly, to create the reality of that, it's really leveraging technologies from IoT perspective. So one is like that journey I mentioned, but I think the other key thing is there's a lot of new technology we can leverage to make this actually in a reality.
How do standards work into this?
Standards are critical in this regard. And really one thing I would say about standards, I really believe the future has to be an open ecosystem. And when I say open ecosystem, I do not mean a GE digital open ecosystem. I mean an open ecosystem for the customer and for their environment. And so in that regard, so things like OPC-UA, MQTT for data exchange, things like using standards like ISA 18.2 and ISA 101 to create optimal interfaces for the operator are really critical to make that a reality.
How does the cloud fit into your vision of the future?
So I believe the future is going to be hybrid cloud. There are certain things you're going to have to always do on-premise or you'd want to do on-premise. And I think in certain scenarios, there is customers where there can be air gap. There actually will be no connectivity to the cloud. But the cloud can provide value in multiple ways. One is reducing cost for the customer, right? So more and more the cost for data storage will go down in the cloud versus on-premise. Secondarily, it's the IT infrastructure. So you can build your own IT infrastructure across plants, across sites to be able to have visibility across the enterprise. But that'll be much easier and simpler to do by using the cloud. And so the other thing is that once you get that data up into the cloud, you want to start then using the compute power of the cloud to start doing things like analytics and analysis. So they can start figuring out other ways to actually perform your efficiencies and productivity. And then once you do that, ideally, then you want to push that back down with a closed loop back into premise to actually make those changes within your operation. So that kind of hybrid cloud closed loop, I really think is the future.
Do you want to connect with the best in the business? Then the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is for you. With thousands of systems integrators and suppliers, the exchange is the one-stop spot for end users, suppliers, and integrators to connect and do business. Whether you are an end user looking for qualified system integration or suppliers, or an integrator or supplier trying to reach customers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is the place to be. See for yourself at www.csiaexchange.com. Can you explain Docker and what it is and its value?
So that's a great question. So I really think Docker has a lot of potential. It is still very immature at this moment in time, but the key things the way I would explain Docker is that if you think of Docker, you can have an application today. Usually you have an application today in a virtual machine. And a virtual machine is a combination of the application and the operating system. So what Docker has done is actually separated that. So you have the application within a Docker container. It's solely just the application with its libraries and binaries. And then beside it, you have the configuration for that application, which is a separate piece as well. And thirdly, you have the operating system. And so this Docker layer combines all three of those together to actually create the runtime application. So why is that useful and powerful? So imagine now you want to update the operating system. You don't have to reinstall or update the actual application. Say you want to update the application, you just replace that Docker container with a new Docker container and automatically it will work. So it really simplifies the update for customers. The other thing is it also simplifies the ability to be able to test in a test environment with that application configuration, then go to the actual runtime environment after that.
What do you see as opportunities for integrators moving forward?
Right, the integrators are key to this. And why do I say the integrators are really key and important is because we have this vision, I believe there's a vision of the intelligent user interface, but to make that a reality, really it's on the integrators. You guys are the ones that will be actually creating those applications. And I actually think with all that new data, there'll be more applications. The customer will want more. They also need guidance. So most customers don't know how to get to where they want to be when it comes to digital transformation. You guys being the trusted advisor, you can really help them, guide them in how to actually get to where they want to be. And I think that's very, very critical. And the other parts of that I think I mentioned is like building those applications. But lastly, another key thing is domain expertise. I think from an integrator's perspective, your golden ticket really comes down to domain expertise. It's something that not a lot of people have in the space that are coming externally from other areas, under industries, like computer scientists, for example. And so leveraging those domain expertise to help the customer do optimizations is really, really critical.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about GE Digital, go to www.ge.com/digital. To contact Ranbir, send him an email at ranbir.saini@ge.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Ranbir, for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com for the music bumpers. Until next time.